Wilfred Lyle Arrowsmith, known to everybody as Fritz, was born into poverty in Bayard, Iowa in 1917. When he was just a very small boy, he started having to go to the railroad tracks, and he would pick up the coal that had fallen off the cars as they sped through. And that's what he and his great-grandmother used on frigid Iowa days to keep from freezing. But he still managed to have a childhood. He and his best friend Dick each had one golf club. I still have Dad's. And they made their own golf course. Kids in those days could do those things. He was an athlete in high school. He so wanted to be a high school basketball coach. That was his big dream. He got a scholarship to the University of Iowa to play basketball, but couldn't get together the $25 he needed for registration. And that dream was crushed. He didn't let that stop him. And later he would say that that was probably the best thing that could have happened, because while being a high school coach might have been great and he would have liked it, if he had done that, he would have never had his own business. He would never have been in the newspaper business. So it was a good thing. After he got out of high school, he got an apprenticeship at a local newspaper. $3 a week, and he worked hard. When he was 18 years old, he met my mother, and they got married 4 months later. They were married for 69 years. Still holding hands just before she died. When World War II came, he enlisted. He wasn't drafted, he enlisted. Became an officer. And after the war, they settled in Council Bluffs, bought a little house with a GI Bill, and Dad crossed the river to work at the Omaha World Herald, which was the big daily newspaper in the area. But he wasn't happy. He had fallen in love with the newspaper business when he was working for this little newspaper, and he wanted something of his own. He didn't want to work for other people. So he found this ad for this little paper in Solon, Iowa that was desperate to have somebody carry it on. They traveled to Solon by bus. They didn't own a car. And talked with Mark Catan, the banker, and he just knew they could do it. And they did it. 5 years later, it really got to be too much. 10 to 18-hour days, 6 days a week. It was too much, so they sold it. Dad went to work for another newspaper. It did not take long before he was not happy. And they bought the Wilton Advocate, which was also on its last legs, and again, they brought it back to life. Those newspapers had to be out every week. I mean, I think there was a law. I think they were allowed 2 weeks a year where they didn't have to publish, but for the most part, they were out every week. They took one week vacation when we went to the Wisconsin Dells when I was a little kid. That was it. When they retired, they finally made up for lost time. They sold everything, every stick of furniture, and they bought an RV. They traveled the country for 10 plus years and loved every minute of it. It was all those vacations they'd never had. They got to see things they'd never thought they were going to see. And then they settled down in North Carolina. Mom's last 5 years were very difficult. She was ill. She had trouble with blood flow to her brain, which left her with some dementia. And she was ill. And Dad became a nurse. No training, but you would have thought he had. He did everything for her without ever a complaint until she died 3 weeks after their 69th wedding anniversary. And we were a little worried about what was going to happen to Dad at that point. The Broadway play Riverboat has a song in it called Old Man River, and there's a phrase in it as this worker is singing, tired of living and scared of dying. Dad was just the opposite. He never tired of living, nor was he afraid to die. He made the best of those last 5 years, even though he missed his wife every minute of every day. Their entire lives, they had always made friends of younger people, and sure enough, he found a couple of younger people and became good friends and spent some time with them until he died at almost 93 years old. George H.W. Bush recently died, and his son said that his last words were, "I love you too." Well, you know what? My dad's last words were, "I love you too." I had just helped him get into bed, tucked him in, and hugged him and said, "I love you," and he said, "I love you too." Both of those men had the exact same last words. Two great men. One had wealth, power, and fame. The other had none of those things, but both of them were equally great. And that, folks, is what America is really all about. People that nobody's ever heard of, that never had $1 million, who in fact were very, very great people. Those are the backbone of this country. Enjoy meeting him. Enjoy the stories he's going to tell. They're really wonderful. He did an amazing job. Enjoy yourselves.